Yeah, it's always, I think that the most important part of my creative process is that it's a process. It's not like it's rarely the outcomes. And you'll see that with some of the pieces that I show, but so I'm actually a social worker, and I do primarily trauma counseling, so that's something that I do all the time. And so I'm always thinking about different concepts of the psyche, what's conscious, what's subconscious, what we know, what we don't know, how we make sense of things, how we experience the world and our inner experiences as well. And I also think a lot about how we have like 500 trillion neurons or something in our brains, and that our brains, we don't even understand how our brains work. And so it's able to pick up on so many different ways of knowing that it's not just the physical world in which we inhabit. You know, we're spiritual beings, we're emotional beings, we're behavioral people that kind of are pack animals that need to be around other people. So these are all the things that I often think about when I'm potting, whether it's intentionally or not. Particularly though when I'm sculpting, I'm always thinking about I'm paying attention to what I'm thinking about. And it's sort of this opportunity to just let my mind wander while also paying attention to where it's wandering to. So that's a big part of what I think would be called my creative process. So then whatever I end up with is usually like, that's just not the point, you know. Whatever it is that ends up at the end is like, it's sort of like just the end of the process. And so I'm not usually going for a certain look. I'm not usually going for, I try, actually with pottery, I find and ceramic work, you really can't have your heart set on it turning out a certain way, because there's so many parts of the process where things can go horribly wrong that it's sort of like you have to really let go and just let the medium speak for itself. It demands to have its own space, whether you want it to or not. I'm sure that maybe, you know, master potters and master clay artists, they have a bit more control. I don't see that happening for me, in part because I don't think I want that. I think that what I want is I want there to be that element of surprise and chaos and just allowing the piece to emerge, because it really is about what I get out of engaging in the process that's so important. So I don't know if that kind of makes sense, but it also it ties up with what I think about all day long, you know, what's known, what's not known, what's conscious, what's subconscious, and all those different layers of knowing. So that's a big part of who I am too. I like things that are messy. I like some structure, but there has to be a lot of room for just the natural growth and evolution of whatever it is that you're doing. Actually, I have a background in music, so not formally trained, but I self-taught cello, and I played cello for quite a while. That's actually how I met my husband, and I played a bit with the North Bay Symphony here and there. I don't anymore, just because I have a new medium now, a new way of expressing myself. And so I started on the wheel, and I took a class with Stacey Caverly, was my first teacher, and so and I was hooked. I wasn't even finished the first round of classes before I purchased my membership, and just started working away. The art of working with clay is just letting go and just letting it be, and acceptance. And
that's such a good lesson for life.
It is. You know what? I think it's been really. I think that the medium just really speaks to me. It just allows me to grow as a person. I think it definitely allows me to grow as a therapist too. I'll explain how I use clay to understand the different aspects of my work. Just so I can understand things, because like I said, we have so many trillions of neurons that we're not just tapped into the physical world. It allows me to just sort of know in other ways that I wouldn't be able to otherwise. You know, not from books, not from lectures and, you know, whatever else. I've covered those bases, but those aren't the only thing to look for. This is a sculpture that I was working on, and I really I was thinking about the concept of splitting. When we talk about trauma, there's often a splitting between maybe, you're living in the present moment, but you're just so much attached to the past because of, the limbic system and the trauma. It forces you to live in the past as well. And so it's this kind of duality, this splitting between the present and the past, where oftentimes people are kind of like they're experiencing the world more in the past than they are in the present. So that was one piece that I wanted to look at. I'm also really, as part of my growth, I'm working towards decolonizing my practice, which kind of means really embracing all these other ways of knowing and looking past, Eurocentric definitions of trauma and treatments of trauma, and really looking at other ways to heal without appropriation. So it's really this journey of like how I can kind of bridge these two worlds in a way that is meaningful and less harmful. So these were the things that I was thinking about as I was making this sculpture. And so I have, this woman this is her present self, and then this is her kind of wounded child self that, so that's the kind of splitting that I was thinking about. And, I wanted to have the braids reaching back. So it's like reaching back with culture to connect with the injured self, and just sort of just really listening and attending to the younger injured self. And of course, that's why I use the colors of the medicine wheel in the middle as well, to kind of represent the importance of the cultural link. So I hope that, she looks like she's got anguish. I hope that that's the kind of look that that this young self has. Oh, and it's such a beast of it really isn't about the outcome, because obviously this isn't a great looking sculpture. But she looks a little bit more serene, because I wanted her to just be calming her nervous system, really sort of just soothing herself with those trauma reactions, so that she can listen to the younger self and the injured self. So this is kind of what I was thinking when I was creating it, but then lo and behold, it of course explodes in the kiln. and I was pretty heartbroken. So the side of her head came off. She had this big split down the middle of her face, and half of her face was blown off, and I kind of looked at it and I was really disappointed, It's like, oh, that's the end of that. But then, so I had to go and kind of, like, she had a trauma, I had a trauma, because I was just so upset. So then I just needed some time and space to heal and to accept what happened. And then I went back and started fitting the pieces together, and I realized that there's some real importance of what happened with this sculpture, because it's split right down the middle. So the whole sculpture is about splitting, and the way that I was conceptualizing splitting was between the two standpoints in life, between present and past. What this was telling me is that I had to look at what happens with the right hemisphere and the left hemisphere as well. And so then I started looking into more of the neurobiology of trauma, and when early trauma happens, then it impacts the right hemisphere of the brain, which is sort of the emotional processing. It's sort of the how we make sense of our world, and more of the attachment-based injuries. Like when people have been horrible to us, then it changes the way that we relate to ourselves or relate to the world. So there were so many different pieces that I needed to learn about the two hemispheres in early trauma that I never would have even thought to go looking for had it not been for this sculpture. So now I have this really beat up piece of art that I don't really like looking at it because it's ugly, but it's been so important in my development and understanding. And there's been other things that I kind of learned from the process, and like I couldn't put it through a glazed kiln, so I had to paint it, and other things like that it's just sort of working with what you've got, and it's very meaningful. But that's an example, I think it's a great example of how how this process of engaging in clay really helps me to understand things and know things on different levels that I never would have known otherwise. So I myself, I don't have any indigenous blood. I'm quite French, Irish, and English, very, very, very white. But I do, like, working in Northern Ontario, it's so critically important because we have huge connections with Indigenous people. And when I was growing up, I had a pile of friends that lived on the reserve, and I was always invited to their homes and things, and so that's really wonderful. I also worked on a major research project from 2013 until 2020, and it's looking at human trafficking for the purpose of sexual exploitation across northeastern Ontario. And with that project, we partnered with the Anishinaabe Nation and also with an elder, Donna DeBasige. And so working, and Rebecca Timms was our contact through the Anishinaabe Nation, and working with Rebecca and Donna for 7 years on this really difficult topic, I learned so much about how I could be supportive. I learned a lot about different protocols and ways of interacting and respect and understanding trauma and understanding what's needed for healing, whether it's within an individual, but also definitely within community. And I really value all of that, all of those teachings that I had. I think it changed me, but at the same time, it's not my culture, and so I'm really careful to not appropriate, but actually, as a part of that process of learning more about some of the Indigenous cultures that we were working with, and then wanting to decolonize my own practice, then I've had to really look at what my own spirituality is and how that kind of has manifested and like, I was born and raised Roman Catholic, but I don't identify in that way. I have a very uncomfortable relationship with that religion now. I mean, it's just me. I'm not saying that others should. That's where I landed with it. But it's made me really look at, like, where do I feel spirit? Where do I feel connection? Where do I feel, and how do I communicate with that? And how do I receive that? And so it's been a really important part of my journey, which then very much informs my practice and my being as a person as well. So this is a fun little teapot that I made, and it's actually one of my first teapots, and it wasn't supposed to be a teapot. A friend of mine asked, like everything that I make, it wasn't supposed to be what it is. A friend of mine asked if I could make like a bit of like an oil lamp to be able to burn oil with a wick. So this is my first try at it. It kind of looked like this, but then the spout was too high. So it wasn't working, being what I originally was thinking it would be. And so then I just started playing with it because it was just going to be kind of whatever anyways. And so I made this fun little top for it. And then I put this little swirl on it, and I was like, oh, isn't that interesting? And then it came through the kiln fine, and so then it came down to glazing it, and I wanted to try like a kind of airbrushing, like it's like a, what is it called, like but it's like an air glaze. So like you put it through this little pot and you blow it and it just kind of comes out, and then I wanted to make like fire, because for me having all the elements present is really important in just about anything that I do. So I really wanted to capture fire, and so it's kind of neat. What I did was I blocked the flames with my fingers, and then I did the black, and then I did the same thing blocking like the black on the other end. So that's how I kind of made these flames. And it's just kind of neat because like those are my fingers, and that you wouldn't have known maybe unless I say that. And then so then I thought, well, the inside should be something really bold, so I just put red on the inside, and this is all underglaze that I did. So all the color is underglaze, and then I just did a clear glaze over top. And then I thought, okay, like this hat looks a little bit like a witch's hat. I should just make it really black. And then as I'm doing this, I'm realizing, I think this is actually a self-portrait. So, and then I thought, like, it's funny because I'm known for being pretty passionate. I'm known for being pretty fiery, and like I get in some arguments sometimes in public with police and whatever because that was back in the time that I worked in sexual violence. So I'd be arguing with like courts and lawyers and police, and like I would just be like picking fights all over town. So I'm kind of known for being a bit fiery. But then it's a teapot, and so I'm really happy to have people just sit down, have a cup of tea with me and just chill out. I want to just sort of, that kind of soothing, healing is also incredibly important to me. And it's also a little teapot because I don't really like big groups of people. This is really just for like me and one other person. So I was like, oh, isn't that interesting? The one job, so I thought, oh, this is kind of fun. I think this is actually meant to be a self-portrait. And I did it during the COVID. So it even says on the bottom that it's done during COVID, which is kind of fun. So I made this probably in like March-ish or something. The bummer is that she really dribbles, like functionally. Not so great. She dribbles all the time, and so that actually makes me a little bit bummed. So I might make another one. I'm not sure because this one is just kind of, but she doesn't have to like function all the time, like just like me. It's okay if I just screw up sometimes. It's okay if I'm like just need a little bit of extra support in doing the things that I need to be doing. It doesn't mean that I'm not doing what I should be doing and that I'm not doing a good job. So yeah, this turns out it's my fun little self-portrait, me as a teapot. So these are really recent pieces. They just came out of we did a raku firing 2 weeks ago. And this is the first time I've had something come out that I like immediately fell in love with them and just like, these are amazing. So raku is a really interesting process. So you make your piece. It's usually made out of raku clay because you need a piece like a kind of clay that can take a good hit because it's going to be a really intense process. And so then you make your pieces, bisque them as usual. So they go through the regular kiln first. Then you do different glaze treatments to them, and then the raku process, we did them outside. So you have a kiln and you have a blowtorch kind of going into it, and so it's like propane blowtorch. You put everything in and you start the torches, and then you get the kiln going up. I think we had it at about 1,750 degrees Fahrenheit, which is like 900 something Celsius. And then what you do is once it gets to temperature and it looks like everything's ready, you turn off the gas, turn off the blowtorch, you open up the kiln, and then you have to like grab tongs and like take them out red hot, and then you put them into, we had like roasting pans and garbage, like metal garbage cans and stuff like that with different combustibles in it. And so it's like dried leaves, dried pine needles, or dried ferns and things like that. And you have to take them from the kiln as fast as you can, put them in in what's a reduction, it's called a reduction thing, throw a few more on, it starts a fire immediately, and then you have to let the fire catch but then smother it right away. So you put the top down on top of it, and then what happens is that you've got an active fire, but you're smothering it, so then the oxygen that would normally be coming from the air to feed the fire is drawing the oxygen out of the clay then and pulling like really cool like metals and whatever else is in the glaze. It pulls it all to the surface. So it's very it's really, really wild and intense and super fun, uber dangerous, and you just get these really neat effects. And so I have a big love for raku, like big love for raku. Like I don't even know if I want to do regular pottery now. So but so these, I also really love skulls a lot. you know, it could be because I'm Scorpio, I'm like born really close to Halloween, so I don't mind, you know, some of these darker kind of things. But also, I honestly think that skulls are super happy looking, because like, I think about, you know, once you take down all the humanity, all the nonsense of being human, you know, just take all the skin away, all the materialism away, all the ability away with the muscles, just take all that stuff away. What we have left is just this grinning skull that's just like grinning eye to eye, like ear to ear, you know, it's just like super happy and just like, hey. So I think skulls are really happy things. I don't understand why making them scary, because to me they're not scary at all, they're super happy.